was a college student living in an old, off-campus house. I'd been pulling all-nighters studying for exams and was dangerously sleep-deprived. One night, I crashed into bed, exhausted. I woke up sometime later, not because of a noise, but because of a feeling. The air in my room felt heavy, and a strange, cloying smell, like damp earth and rotting leaves, filled my nose. I realized I was paralyzed, lying flat on my back. In the corner of my room, by the closet, a shadow moved. It peeled itself away from the deeper darkness and shuffled forward. It was a woman, or at least had the shape of one. She was hunched and ancient, wrapped in dark, tattered rags. I couldn't see her face. It was hidden by a curtain of long, stringy gray hair. She moved with a limping, shuffling walk, one foot dragging behind the other. The sound of it, a soft, rhythmic scrape, 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 was deafening in the silent room. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to yell for my roommates, but my body was a useless prison. The figure reached my bedside and slowly, deliberately, began to climb onto the bed. I felt the mattress sink beside me, the weight of her presence shockingly real. She crawled over me, her body settling on my chest, and the pressure was immense. I felt my breath catch, my ribs creaking under the strain. I could feel her ragged hair brushing against my face, and the musty smell was overwhelming. I shut my eyes, praying for it to end. I focused all of my will on moving just one finger, a single toe, anything to break the spell. After a struggle that felt like hours, I managed a twitch. The pressure vanished instantly. I snapped my eyes open. The room was empty. The foul smell was gone. But the image of the hag crawling onto my chest would haunt me for years. I had been struggling with insomnia for weeks. On this particular night, I'd finally crashed into a deep sleep, only to be ripped awake a few hours later. But awake wasn't the right word. My mind was racing, my eyes wide open, but my body felt like it was made of lead. I was lying on my back, staring up at the ceiling. The room was bathed in pale moonlight, casting long, twisted shadows, and it was in those shadows that my nightmare began to take shape. At the foot of my bed, a form started to pull itself together. At first, it was just a dark mass, a hole in the dim light. But then a shape emerged that would be burned into my memory forever. It was a head, and only a head, floating grotesquely in the air. Its features were a horrifying cartoon of a human face. Eyes that were too wide and completely black, a nose that was just two slits, and a mouth hanging open in a silent, endless scream. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over the bone, somehow looking both rotten and wet. It made no sound, but I heard a noise in my mind, a low, guttural hum that vibrated through my skull. Paralyzed by fear, all I could do was watch as the horrific head began to float slowly toward me. It moved with a sickening smoothness, gliding over my legs, then my torso, getting closer and closer to my face. I fought against the paralysis, a silent scream trapped in my chest, but I was powerless. The head was just inches away now, its empty eyes staring into mine, the awful humming growing louder in my mind. Just as I felt its phantom presence was about to touch me, it just faded away. The release was instant. A raw scream tore from my throat as I scrambled backward against my headboard, my heart hammering against my ribs.
I had dealt with sleep paralysis for years, but this particular episode went further than any before. I woke in that familiar state of total paralysis, frozen in my own bed. Beside me, my husband slept on, completely oblivious to the horror unfolding. That overwhelming sense of dread washed over me, a feeling I knew all too well. But this time was different. This time, something was in the room with me. Sitting on my chest was a shadow figure. It was shaped like a person, but made of pure darkness, a void that seemed to drink the light around it. It had no real features except for a mouth that split open into a grin, revealing a set of massive, glistening teeth. I felt that familiar, crushing weight that stole my breath. But then, it did something new. It leaned down, its face close to mine, and I felt a phantom touch on my skin. It started dragging me. Not with its hands, but with its face. Its teeth seemingly latched onto me as it began to pull me sideways, off the bed. The sensation was indescribable, a mix of pain, pressure, and pure terror. In agonizing slow motion, I felt my head and shoulders being pulled over the edge of the mattress. I was fighting back in my mind, trying to dig my fingers into the sheets to wake my husband, to find any anchor in reality. But it was useless. I could feel the cool air of the room on my back as I was dragged further and further, the monstrous face on mine pulling me down into the darkness. I was slipping, helpless, convinced this thing was dragging me straight to hell. Just as my legs were about to clear the bed, I felt a violent jolt. My body was my own again. I fell to the floor with a thud and scrambled away from the bed, a scream finally tearing from my throat. The figure was gone, but the feeling of being dragged by my face would stay with me forever.
I had just moved into my first apartment. I was exhausted from the stress of the move and a new job, and I kept falling asleep on the couch. One night, I drifted off watching TV. I woke up later in the pitch dark, not to the TV's glow, but to a deep, unnerving silence. A sense of dread washed over me, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I tried to sit up, but my body was completely unresponsive. My head was stuck turned to the left, my cheek mashed into a sofa cushion. Panic started to set in when I heard it, a faint shuffling in the room, a soft, dragging noise like someone pulling heavy cloth across the carpet. I strained my ears, my senses on high alert. I could feel a pressure building in the room, that distinct and terrifying feeling that I wasn't alone. Then I felt the couch cushions at my feet dip, as if someone had just sat down. They just sat there, waiting. I tried to scream, to call out, to make any sound at all, but my throat was locked tight. The paralysis was absolute. After an eternity of suffocating fear, a voice whispered right in my ear, so close I could feel the breath on my skin. It said, "Just coming in to say goodnight." A wave of cold terror crashed over me as I felt a gentle but firm pressure on my back, pushing me toward the edge of the couch. Just as I thought I was about to be shoved onto the floor, my body jolted. I could move again. I shot upright, gasping for air, the whisper still echoing in the empty, silent room. Sleep paralysis. The scariest thing I've ever experienced. You're awake. You know you are. Your eyes are open, taking in the familiar shapes and shadows of your own room, but you cannot move a muscle. A scream builds in your throat, but it dies before it can ever become sound. You are a prisoner in your own body. Then, through the haze of confusion and rising panic, you see it. A dark presence in the corner, and with it comes a feeling of absolute helpless dread. A terror far worse than any nightmare, because every part of your conscious mind is screaming that this is real. The first time it happened to me, I was utterly exhausted. I just started a demanding new job in a city where I knew no one. and my sleep schedule was a wreck. I woke up abruptly in the dead of night, and my mind was instantly, terrifyingly sharp, but my body was frozen solid, as if it were carved from stone. Pure, primal panic set in. I was trapped, a silent observer inside a body that wouldn't respond. That's when my eyes darted to the corner of my room, and I saw it. A tall, slender figure taking shape out of the ambient darkness. It had no face, no discernible features, just a void-like form made of pure shadow, and every instinct I had told me it was hostile. I fought to scream, to call for help, but all I could manage was a desperate, strangled hum. The figure didn't walk. It glided, moving closer until it was looming over my bed. I felt a crushing, impossible pressure on my chest, squeezing the very air from my lungs while distorted, static-like whispers seemed to fill the room, coming from everywhere at once. The entire ordeal felt like an eternity. Then, in an instant, it was over. I gasped for air, and I could move again. The figure was gone. The room was empty, and I was alone with the echoing terror. I was terrified to go back to sleep, my mind racing with questions. Was I losing my grip on reality? Was I going crazy? After some frantic late-night research, I finally found the answer: sleep paralysis. It's a surprisingly common phenomenon that happens when your mind wakes up before your body does. During the dreaming part of sleep, called REM sleep, your brain secretes a neurochemical that paralyzes your voluntary muscles. This is a natural safety feature called atonia, and it's what stops you from physically acting out your dreams and potentially hurting yourself. But sometimes, the system glitches. If you regain consciousness before the atonia wears off, you're left in that horrifying state, mentally awake, but physically paralyzed. The terrifying figures, sounds, and sensations are hypnopompic hallucinations, your dreaming brain essentially bleeding into your waking reality. Your brain's fear circuits are sent into overdrive because you feel completely and utterly helpless, triggering a primal fight-or-flight response that you have no way of acting on. Knowing the science behind it definitely helped, but it didn't completely erase the visceral memory of that night. The experience left me with a deep, lingering anxiety about sleeping for months. It's so easy to understand why, throughout all of human history, people have interpreted this exact experience as a real encounter with demons, ghosts, or evil spirits. The feeling of a malevolent presence is just that convincing. In different cultures, these terrifying visitations are explained through folklore. In the Middle East, they are often attributed to the jinn, powerful spirit-like creatures that can terrorize or even harm their victims. In parts of Italy, a similar experience is known as an attack by the pandafece, often described as an evil witch or a ghostly cat-like creature that sits on the victim's chest. These stories are a chilling reminder of how fragile our perception of reality can be, and how our brains can construct terror from a simple glitch in the sleep cycle. Sleep paralysis isn't just a bad dream. It's a unique and terrifying state where you are consciously awake for a nightmare that unfolds in your own room. But in the aftermath, discovering how many other people, across time and across cultures, have gone through the exact same thing makes it feel profoundly less isolating. It's a shared human experience, even if it's one of our most frightening. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Share your story and what it felt like in the comments below. Let's talk about it.